So I'm Jen Abrams. I am a multidisciplinary performance maker, and I'm co-founder of ourgoods.org.
And I'm Caroline Woolard. My background's in visual art. I make research-based site-specific installations, and I'm also a co-founder of ourgoods.org.
So Our Goods is a barter network. We help creative people trade skills, spaces, and objects to get their work done without money.
This means that we connect people in person to do asset mapping exercises, and then we connect them online to meet up and trade skills after the fact. We may very well be the only web-based cultural institution in the room.
So I want to start out with a little story. It's 1994. I'm a young performance maker in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm making performances in collaboration with other artists, but on the production end of things, I'm kind of like a one-woman show, right? So I'm getting up at 8 in the morning, and I'm going to the lighting rental place, and I'm renting the lights. I'm hauling those lights by myself to the venue. I'm hanging the lights. I'm designing the lights. I'm pausing for a few minutes or maybe a couple hours to actually make the work. Rehearsal's over. I'm back at my house. I'm at my sewing machine because I'm sewing the costumes, right? And I'm making it work, and I'm making it work in competition with my peers. I'm in competition with my peers for scarce resources. Those scarce resources are charitable funding. They are stage time at the few venues that we had at that time in Chicago. They are audience members. They are esteem, that thing that we trade in because we don't have money, right, is who is esteemed in the community. So fast forward about 5 years, I arrive in New York City, a little bit older, a little bit more tired. It's 1999, and I'm brought to this place called Wow Cafe Theater. At Wow Cafe Theater, we have a gift economy, right? We sit down in the circle, we build relationships with each other. That's how we get our work done. I get the right to perform my work and be supported by the people at WOW because I have been in that circle supporting other people in that space and building my relationships with them, right? We exist not in competition with each other, but in mutual support with each other. And that's how we make the work there. So I'm at WOW, and I'm sitting in the circle, and for the first time, I raise my hand and I say, I need someone to design the lights for my show. And this was terrifying for me for a couple of reasons. First of all, because I'm not totally sure they're going to do it right. And second of all, because I'm not totally sure I'm a person who deserves that kind of help. So there I am, I'm holding my breath. And this woman, Lynn Kumel, raises her hand in the circle and she says, I can design your lights for you. That woman, Lynn Kumel, 15 years later, is still my dear friend. The people I met in that circle 15 years ago are helping me raise my child. That's how we run at WOW. These are the relationships that I build, and that's how I make my work now, and that's how I have been making my work for 15 years. So, people used to look at me funny for a long time when I would talk about making work in peer-to-peer support rather than in competition for scarce resources. And the zeitgeist has sort of come around to this idea of sharing. And now I find myself in the company of some pretty amazing people. So I want to talk a little bit. That didn't come out of nowhere, right? There's a context that made that happen. So we want to talk a little bit about the context that makes that happen.
So when thinking about why Jen was surrounded with all these people who were suddenly excited by and not weirded out by the things that she had been working with for so long, we decided there were 3 main factors that probably relate to all of the organizations that you're running. And the first would be limited funding, which you're all familiar with. The second is the networked information era, the fact that you can dip into Wi-Fi at any time. The third is the rise of creator culture. So to break that down, limited funding, I don't have to tell you much about. The Alliance for the Arts in 2008 put out a pretty shocking report that showed that 80% of art organizations were reducing their budgets, and that meant that they had to cut 50% of programs and staff. So it's a very hard circumstance, and we started asking ourselves, what do you do when you don't have much money to work with? The second context is that of what Manuel Castells calls the networked information era. So when you have a smartphone and a laptop and a computer, if you're on the privileged side of the digital divide, and you expect to be in asynchronous communication with people at all times, how might that affect cultural institutions and the way you engage with work today? And the third one, the rise of creator culture, is the kind of person that's created in a networked information age. What happens when you imagine that the second you have an idea or something to share, you can instantly connect to 1 million people right now? How might we change the way that we produce cultural institutions when we know that this is an expectation of a majority of people around us? At Our Goods, what we did is we made a barter network. We made it both in person, in events, and also online. So if you go to ourgoods.org, you'll see that you can post what you have and what you need, and you can offer it to people regardless of how much money you have or they have. You can search for the thing that you need in order to get your project done, and you can contact someone who seems interesting to you. When you contact them, you begin a barter conversation, and you leave feedback when you're done.
So we were motivated to create a barter network and this peer-to-peer kind of resource sharing environment because we were thinking about this context, right? So we realized that we, as cultural producers, actually value each other more than the marketplace values us, right? So if we exchange with each other, instead of competing for the scarce resource of charitable funding and taking that money and exchanging it with strangers for the resources we need to bring back into our community, if we can exchange with each other, we can unlock a tremendous amount of non-cash resources that are actually available to us. We realized this because when the financial markets collapsed, none of us lost any of our skills. None of us lost any of our relationships. Right? So Our Goods facilitates this by making these resources in our community visible online and then creating powerful and simple in-person events. So I'm going to tell you really quickly about one of the most powerful events we did. We were asked to speak at a conference on Staten Island. We were preceded by these speakers who were talking about less funding, more government regulation, more burdensome laws, and the whole room just kind of went like this, right? And so Caroline and I came on and we said, okay, everybody get in groups of 4. You're going to each have 10 minutes. You get 1 minute to talk about a challenge that you're facing right now. And then for 9 minutes, that group of 4 is going to brainstorm about how they can help you personally or how they can connect you with resources outside of the room. And what happened was the energy went whoosh. And what happened was the session in that conference ended. The conference needed the room for something else, and we could not get those people to stop helping each other. They would not stop. We could not get them out of the room, right? It was really beautiful, and it was really powerful, and it completely changed the way people were thinking about the challenges that they faced. So that's the other thing that taught us, and events like that taught us, is that our value as an organization is not in being a curator, not in being a gatekeeper for who gets the scarce resource of community esteem, but rather becoming a hub for connecting people and cultivating a network of community respect. And that network of community respect then begins to support the art making. So for us, that's about participation. And we want to talk about participation for a second. And what participation, because it's been talked about a little bit in the room today, and I think will be for the rest of the time. What does participation really mean?
So when we think about authentic engagement and people's desire to tweet or share information or participate, I think it's important to remember that it isn't always genuinely wanted or given. And so if you think back and look at the 60s, you can find a lot of people talking about participation and collaboration. And so going back to 1969, Sherry Arnstein wrote about the ladder of citizen participation. And it seems like a good precedent for a lot of people to be aware of as they imagine their cultural institutions asking people to participate. Because often participation just means informing someone about how they might act in a space. And we want to move beyond that. So, for example, if you take Marina Abramovich's piece at MoMA, you were invited to sit in front of her. For me, that would be considered informing someone about how they might participate. You were not asked whether there should be 2 chairs or 1 chair, whether it should be 2 members of the public facing each other or just her. So to move into consulting with what you might consider your public, or as Jay Rosen says, the people formerly known as the audience, you would have to first ask, what are you interested in? Does this idea resonate with you? And you might hear some flags, you might hear red flags that you hadn't even considered, because all of a sudden you're engaging with people that you haven't talked to. And to move even further, you could involve these people and say, what are alternate projects we might create? So not just taking feedback, and not even taking feedback regularly, but actually asking for other ideas and then starting to develop them. So moving even further towards what she calls actual collaboration, it's not just shared labor or shared participation, it's shared decision making. And this is the way that you start to share power. So what if collaboration meant in cultural institutions that you got feedback and then had multiple sessions to think through how you should even call the first meeting around making a project? What if you moved towards empowerment where you asked whether you were even the right institution to call that meeting, let alone how to hold the meeting and who might be a stakeholder that should be invited?
So these ideas, they call some pretty deep questions about what it means to be a cultural institution, and particularly this idea of peer-to-peer support and creation calls into some pretty big ideas about curation and what it actually means to create a network of mutual respect and have the artwork move out of that. These are the ideas that we're really excited about. These are the ideas that we think can address some of the questions that have been called by the previous speakers. We're really excited to be here over the course of the next couple of days and talk to you and listen to what you have to say about these ideas.
So just to reiterate, what if your institution was not valuable for what it curated, but for how it could connect members authentically and really listen to what they want? Thank you.